8 mice were given paradise, unlimited food, unlimited water, 0 predators for 600 straight days, and every one of them died anyway. Not from hunger, not from disease, not from a single predator. Something else killed them, and it happened while they had everything they needed to live. The man who built it gave it a name. John B. Calhoun spent 4 decades as a research psychologist at the National Institute of Mental Health, and in 1973, he published the results of his most complete experiment, a sealed mouse enclosure he called Universe 25. 8 founding mice grew at their peak into a colony of 2,200, inside a box 54 inches on a side, with food and water that never once ran out. No predator was ever introduced. No disease was ever detected. By any measure biology usually applies, that colony should have been the healthiest population Calhoun ever built. It is one of the most cited experiments of the 20th century, and it has been misread in one direction or another almost since the day he published it. Almost everyone who has heard of it has heard the wrong explanation for what happened next. The popular version of this story says it was overpopulation. Too many mice, not enough space, nature enforcing a limit. But that explanation doesn't survive contact with what Calhoun actually built. Food never ran out at any point, across 600 days. Water never ran out. There was no famine. Nobody went hungry on the day the colony died, or on any day before it. What ran out wasn't food. It was standing. Calhoun had built 64 nesting compartments and 16 water stations on every wall. Enough shelter, on paper, for the entire peak population, several times over. But a nesting compartment in that colony was never just shelter. It was a defended territory, a claimed mate, a place in a hierarchy that only has so many rungs, and once every rung is occupied, being born into the colony does not create a new one. In the wild, that ceiling barely matters, because it is never fixed for long. A predator takes an adult, and a rung opens. A young mouse disperses to unclaimed ground miles away, and a rung opens somewhere else entirely. Calhoun removed both of those release valves on purpose. No predator, ever, and a sealed enclosure with nowhere to disperse to. He didn't just remove scarcity, he removed the 2 mechanisms that normally keep a population's need for roles in line with its supply of them. Every mouse born into that colony survived to adulthood. No predator to cull the population, no disease to thin it. And once the walls closed, nowhere to disperse to. The number of mice needing a role climbed every generation. The number of roles available did not. Resources, abundant. Roles, fixed. Population, climbing. The same shape shows up somewhere far more ordinary and far less sealed. PhD graduates climb every year. The number of permanent research positions waiting for them does not. And unlike Calhoun's mice, those graduates can see the shortage coming and compete for it anyway. What happens to a system where every member survives, but there's nowhere left for most of them to belong? Not a chair pulled out from under anyone, the way the old game works. A floor that holds perfectly still, while the number of players never stops climbing. In Calhoun's colony, a specific group of males stopped competing entirely. They never fought for territory, never pursued a mate. They spent their days doing exactly one thing, grooming themselves over and over, with a strange, mechanical precision that had nothing to do with hygiene anymore. Sleek, unmarked, uninjured, and completely absent from the colony's actual life. Calhoun called them the beautiful ones, and by the time the colony collapsed, they were most of what was left alive in it. It reads, in the popular telling, like giving up. But every one of those males had already tried the alternative more than once. They matured into a colony where every defensible territory, every available mate, every rung in the hierarchy had already been claimed by mice who got there first. Every attempt at competing returned the same result: failure, sometimes an actual injury, and never once a win. Grooming is a normal behavior in every mouse. Cheap, safe, and reliably rewarding. The kind of small maintenance behavior that costs nothing and risks nothing. It was never supposed to be the entire behavior. For the beautiful ones, it became the only behavior left that never punished them. And once it took over, it rarely let go. Mice moved back into low-density conditions, largely never returned to competing. There's a version of this that doesn't require a sealed box or 4,000 mice. He is 41, senior credit analyst, a bank most people would recognize. He spends his working life underwriting the case for other people's next promotion, other people's next raise, other people's next leap, reading the numbers, checking the logic, signing off. He hasn't submitted a case for his own in 6 years. Not because he lacks the numbers. His numbers are better than the file he approved last week, because the track he'd need has had the same 3 people ahead of him on it since before he started, and none of them are leaving, retiring, or failing badly enough to move. He still shows up. He's good at his job. He has simply stopped submitting the one application that used to be the entire point of doing it, and become, instead, extremely good at helping everyone else submit theirs. What we've been calling a warning about human collapse is itself something more complicated, a documented distortion of what Calhoun actually argued. Historians who went back to his original writing found his own reading of Universe 25 was less apocalyptic than the story that outlived him. He believed conceptual innovation, the human capacity to invent entirely new kinds of roles a mouse colony can never generate for itself, was a real escape route mice never had. Popular culture kept the death spiral. It dropped the hope because a hopeful ending travels less well than a warning does. There's a second problem with the story, as it's usually told. Mice cannot walk away from a sealed box. Humans generally can. Controlled crowding studies run on actual human populations through the 1970s never found a clean, direct link between density and social breakdown. Once other factors were accounted for, the effect that looked so stark in a sealed pen mostly disappeared under a roof with a door. And Calhoun's own 8 founders were, by day 600, 4 generations inbred inside a colony that was never designed to separate genetics from density. Whether that inbreeding or an undetected disease played some independent role in what happened to them is a question the historical record has never fully closed. So, no walls closing in, no literal famine coming. This is not a forecast for a species. But the mechanism Calhoun actually isolated was never about square footage, and it doesn't retire just because the extrapolation to human collapse doesn't hold cleanly. It was the ratio between how fast a population can enter competition for a position and how fast new positions get created. That ratio doesn't require a sealed box, a fixed species, or even scarcity in the ordinary sense. It only requires a system where entry keeps getting cheaper, while the number of positions that actually matter stays roughly fixed. The mice had walls they could point to, 4 sides and a roof, and a name for what was killing them once someone finally gave it one. Whatever is running the same mechanism in a system with no visible walls at all is very much harder to see coming, and much harder to know, from the inside, whether it has already started. Eight mice, 2,200 at the peak. 0 births survived after day 600. Not hunger. Not a wall. A ratio nobody was tracking until it had already flipped. Food, unlimited. Water, unlimited. Room to matter, gone. The floor that used to slow this down, scarcity, distance, effort, is getting engineered away, a little more every year, in systems that have nothing to do with mice. Something always fills the gap that leaves. Not food this time, not water, not space. Something that thinks. When the thinking itself gets handed off to something else, what is left standing to atrophy?